All right, so that should go, and that's already detected it. That's a good thing. Go live there, and that's good. And hopefully that'll kick in. And I don't think I'm worried about the audio. Okay.
Should have brought my keyboard. I could have played some intro music for us.
Intro music, yeah.
Because you can't use. I went live the other day, and I told Alexa to play some classical music in the other room, just like real light, and I got kicked off.
Really, for playing?
Yeah.
Because they probably paid for a license for it. You got to.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. I just was like, there was some dead time, so I thought, oh, I'll play some classical music. That would be good to give the live feed some sound, and it shut me down like instantly. So
that sucks. I was just gonna say that sounds like a really good idea, getting Alexa in here, but
yeah.
You know what? I feel like we're a little blurry. I'm gonna go hit the autofocus button.
All right. I'll entertain the good people.
Yeah. Say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone. It is April 6, 2019. What is that? The 4th month of the year, 1st month of the 2nd quarter. Getting going here.
In our slightly different new studio, kind of. It's kind of newish, right?
Updated.
Same place, but we got some decor and some lights, so.
We're cleaning our studio room.
I wish.
Getting
more than that
set up for you guys.
We're here to talk about Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. This week we're going to be covering Rule 3. Fix this too. And Rule 3, what is it?
So what is it? He has. Well, why don't you read it, because he has very specific names.
Make friends with people who want the best for you. That's the. Is the audio working? Okay. I'm all panicky and anxious about all the audio video stuff, but after it's dialed in, I can relax a bit.
It's always a little bit, when you have new things, you're like troubleshooting it, and you want it to go.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan. This is Dallas. We're part of the Napa Jordan Peterson meetup group that meets every week, every Thursday night, and we've almost hit a year, right? You started the group in May?
Is that right?
I think we're coming up close.
It's only one year?
We're almost on a year mark.
It was more than a year already. Jeez.
I wasn't the first one, so it's hard for me to measure it. I think I didn't come to like July or August.
I'd have to go through my notes.
But we have discussions about Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and we explore his ideas. We find the truth in them, we find the rot in them, and we just kind of learn from each other's perspectives, I would say. And then Saturday nights, the members that want to get together, and we do it in front of a camera, so the internet can tell us, if we're on track, if we're off track, what you think, and kind of be able to open the forum a bit to, share our perspectives with others and hear others' perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So, make friends who want the best for you. What does that mean to you, Dallas?
Well, I think to me the real thing that pops out, it says don't rescue the damned. To me that says it all in this chapter. And you mentioned briefly earlier about what's his name, Guy Kawasaki. Yeah,
Guy Kawasaki's the startup guy, right?
Kawasaki, he's the rich dad poor dad guy.
Oh, is he?
Or no, wait, you said rich dad poor dad, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely not Guy Kawasaki.
Who's Guy Kawasaki?
Guy Kawasaki was part of Apple. He was like one of their marketing guys, and then he did a bunch of startup stuff.
I was thinking of
It is another Asian fellow that does Rich Dad Poor Dad, I believe. But let's just look it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Might as well give people the correct information. Rich Dad. No, we'll just make up lies on the internet, right? It doesn't matter. It's the internet. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki.
See, I was close.
You're damn close. See.
Yeah. It's some spread lies on the internet. It always makes me think of the internet is for porn.
Oh yeah, Avenue Q.
Avenue Q. Yeah,
classic.
That's awesome.
Broadway show. I think it's Broadway. Let's play.
Yeah. My wife loves that show. She sings that. The internet is for porn. So, so you were talking about how he kind of makes a point where if you want to be rich, hang out with rich people, or, more specifically, if you want to be successful in life, you have to surround yourself with successful people. And Jordan Peterson is making an argument that is sort of like that. But to me, it's more, don't rescue the damned. and Peterson makes it more of a warning against hanging out with people who I guess you might consider to be the opposite of successful people.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a bookend to Rule 1, because Rule 1's kind of like stand up straight, shoulders back, make yourself look like you could be someone that can help others and present yourself that way. Where this is kind of like also putting a book on that, like, well, not everyone can be helped always. You know, when you go out to rescue someone, he said on the Dave Rubin snippet we watched in the group was, the lifeguard, when he goes to rescue someone, he puts out his foot first, right? He's floating with his foot to keep a distance because you don't want the drowning person to pull you down. And the other example we used from the group was airplanes, right? Oxygen mask comes down, you put your mask on first before helping others.
Right.
Right? You got to, focus. There's a level of priority here, and it's just the simple fact is you're not always capable of saving someone else. And don't die doing it, because you can help many more if you live, right? So it's really like something about kind of like setting boundaries and maintaining it. Like, you want to be helpful, but don't become a martyr.
Right.
And I think that's the other hard thing in life is, like, there's a lot of times people want to do things for you didn't ask, and then they're mad why you didn't appreciate it. It's like, well, I didn't value that. It's kind of like the same things. Like, you could offer all these things to a person, but unless they want it, they're not going to respect it or give you anything back for that. You're just spinning your wheels.
Right. And we, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to ask. But 10 times out of 10, we want to tell people, what to do. It's like we watch television shows and we're like, oh, they should be doing this or they should be doing that. It's almost like it's innate in us to do that. But people who are successful don't do that.
Yeah, he mentions in the chapter, it makes me think, because, like, so there are some people that when you get bad news, they actually feel bad for you. They'll open themselves and be hurt as well, where other people are just, like, happy that something bad happened to you. Right. And that obviously isn't cool, and that really lets you know what type of friend
what is
you
that?
have.
That's Schadenfreude, though. But it's not necessarily Schadenfreude. It's just like, when you walk into, a restaurant, you're like, oh, I can't believe they didn't, refill my water glass or something. We're kind of like always looking for that. And I think it's the same with our friends, I think we're like, so somehow the human creature has a predisposition towards not putting our own oxygen mask on first. We have a predisposition to, like, wanting to put other people's oxygen masks on.
Well, yeah, there's definitely some instincts. I mean, that example of the bad friend, that was just that was the type of friend that Jordan Peterson doesn't want you to have. But hearing the example of what you're just saying, like, you're at a restaurant, you said?
Yeah.
I'm losing my train of thought. Too many ideas going on. But what were you saying? Just like what happens at the restaurant?
Oh, they like we want to criticize the waiter.
Oh yeah,
they're criticize the service or whatever.
Yeah, they're just very critical.
I think we tend to be critical.
Yeah, we have that. We have that, like you said, instinct, right?
Right.
And it's tough because sometimes we are very emotional and sometimes we're overcritical. And unless you have some experience of when to open your mouth and when to keep it shut, that overcriticalness might come out. And I think that you just get better over time after so many embarrassing moments, that keep you up at 4 a.m. Why the hell did I do that? You live enough life, you eventually figure out when and when not to. At least that's my theory.
Of being critical of things and people.
Yeah, but like, there are all these instincts, like you said. It's like when we enter a fight or flight situation, like if we can calm ourselves and get past that, rush of emotion, whether it's anger or jealousy, right? When the friend has bad news and you're jealous of them, so you're happy to see it, right? That's that like base instinct or that base like sin almost.
Right.
But if you can like process that, just like slow your roll and like, well, it's not time to be jealous. I can laugh in my head later or whatever, but it's like, I need to be a good friend. I need to open up. I need to feel. If you can kind of think about it a little bit more logically, I think you get better results. Like when you're encountered, like someone gets mad at you all of a sudden, you're like, the adult in the room is going to be the person that's like, calm down. Let's talk about this, not be like all combative in their face back. So I think you're right. It's like there's a lot of these instincts we have to suppress.
So I'm wondering if there's a correlation, or maybe that's it. Maybe it's just that we have an instinct to want to help other people rather than help ourselves.
Well, definitely. I mean, that's what Rule 2 is about, is helping yourself like you were someone you were taking care of.
Right.
So we definitely put other people's first. And in some in some ways, it's definitely easier for me to fix Dallas's problems than me wanting to fix my own.
Right.
Because the easy ones problems that are easy to fix for me are already fixed, right? I'll take care of those fast. The ones I really need work are the ones I really don't want to work on. So, hey, Dallas, what problems can I solve for you?
Yeah, exactly.
So there is that kind of eagerness to...
Cleaning your room would be more fun than cleaning my room.
Probably, right?
No.
Man, Dallas got this great poster. Why is he hanging up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can always see the solutions to other people's problems, which is, I guess, that's rule 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then
learn to look at your own problems.
Yeah, and there's like that whole giving advice thing, right? Like you can just brush off what they're saying and just give them advice, but like it takes another thing to really listen and feel with the person, and explore it with them, because that's what psychologists do, right? They ask questions. They don't tell someone that's paying them high money or what to do to fix their lives, because obviously I think we all sometimes know what we have to do. We just don't want to do it, or we're making excuses or rationalizations, and so until we're convinced we have to fix them, and I think we're the only ones that really can convince that. And I think that makes me think of like there's certain people with problems that don't even know they have problems, right? And you want to help them sometimes, right? And he's like, dude, you got this problem. You really need it. Like, might be addiction, right? You're really addicted. I really want to help you. I don't want to see you go down this path. But until they admit they have the problem, you can't help them. And one of the things Peterson says is, the only way to really address the problem is through leadership, leading by example. Like, and so when things do fall apart for them, they hit rock bottom, they can look around for the heroes around them and see what they're doing, what behaviors they have, how, Sally doesn't have this problem. Why can she do all this stuff and still, not deal with this? Why am I the one that, the world's picking on me type of thing? I really like that. And I think that really connects with the message of this chapter.
Another thing I found interesting from the chapter was it talked about making new ruts. At the beginning it talked about being a sort of up and out of there person. And I thought that was an interesting thing to think about, because there's this idea of wherever you go, there you are. So it's sort of like, 'cause some people will run to flee their problems without dealing with them. But Peterson was also, as he is, he's kind of a contrarian. His advice is almost to run. It's like sometimes it's good to go and start over, and so I thought that was interesting, because that's sort of a dichotomy.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to preach one extreme or another, but a lot of Peterson's message have these what I call bookends, right? It's like you want it between, it's like they're limits. Like you don't want this extreme and you don't want this extreme. It's somewhere in the middle. Like, well, that's helpful. Yeah. The extremes are easy to follow. Like always get mad. Okay, I can do that, right? Yeah. Or always be judgmental.
The extremes inform the mean, so maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's said, you got to use your senses and live some life experience to get some wisdom to dial where that actual center is.
Right. Yeah, you can't detect the center if you always stay in the center.
Yeah, because you can think of some pretty extreme stuff. So, I mean, until you actually know some notches on that spectrum, like, okay, I've tried this. I know that kind of feels like it's right of center or left of center, You can sort of feel...
That's the idea of the tree. If you want your branches to go to heaven, your roots need to go to hell. Because if you're always going up, so to speak, or you're always going, into the good, your spectrum is only from the middle out. And then, so once you start going down into the bad, then your spectrum, like your capacity, it literally doubles. So I think that's what he's kind of saying there too, is tied in. I think that's a good way of looking at it.
It reminds me of what he says about all our like dormant skills. We just gotta practice to activate. Is that similar?
Well, similar, but I think more. You were talking about finding the middle, finding between the bookends. I guess.
Just kind of feeling it out.
Yeah. So if you imagine if you only had one bookend, you wouldn't know where the middle of your bookshelf was. Your middle would actually be somewhere between the middle and the extreme. But if you go to both extremes, then your middle is more true to center. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe that's why this book is so popular, is that it kind of does that, like where it talks about, well, seek the truth, but also find the rot. It's like, just don't take everything, not everything is true. You got to still search for the lies too. So that was another set of bookends I found in the book that I think the book's probably full of them. Like, so it really maybe helps us find those centers.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's kind of Aristotle, right? Doctrine of the mean. Find the center.
I'm not familiar with that. Oh, that's cool though.
Yeah, well, that's Aristotle talks about, you take anything like, let's say, greed is a famous example, and too much greed is bad, but too little greed is bad as well. That's the doctrine of the mean. And if we take this and apply it to it, you can't really understand. Like, some people have like a distaste for the rich, right? But if they've never put themselves in the position of the rich, then they're not in the center. They're not living in the middle, right? They're somewhere between, because they've gone to the hatred of the rich, and then the truth, which is somewhere in the middle, according to what we've been saying. But they've never put themselves in the position of the rich person, and so what they're doing is they'd be living a life lie.
Well, they just don't have the truth, so their models aren't accurate. I mean, they don't have the tools to understand the rich, so they look like monsters sometimes.
And vice versa too. I bet you that's probably why we culturally, because we don't like people that do that, but culturally we also don't like people that are born into money and never work for it and have no backbone or anything like that. And it's probably something like that too. They've never really put themselves in the position of a poor person, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or someone that's had the system continually fight them. When you've had, like, I hate to use the word, but privileges in your life that you've never had these barriers, or how do you know they exist unless you've actually experienced them? And if you don't have those barriers, when you think of someone else, the way our mind works is we project ourselves onto them, and then we learn more about them, and then we kind of can see more of them. But initially, when we first, like, get into a relationship, we project all our hopes of our potential mate on them. And that's why it's like pure ecstasy when you start the relationship, because they're the dream person, They seem to want the same things you want, but as you get to know them, you're like, oh wait, they're not exactly this person, they're actually more of this guy over here. And then you have to figure out if that's going to work or not.
Right. Yeah.
But it's interesting. So, like, if you have that perspective, so when you meet people, you can kind of understand them better. And if you understand the world better, you can organize chaos better. So I think, it's better for everyone if you can understand the limitations of the poor and the limitations of the rich, too. Because, like, I know a lot of people think in society that, all my problems go away if I just had money. But as everyone with money knows, there's tons of problems there, and even more problems because of the money. Like a lot of celebrities talk about how their friends that used to be good friends now are just, asking for money left and right. Come on, man, you got 10 grand. It's nothing to you. Just buy me this car. It's like, and then they're no longer friends, and it's lonely at the top. So there are all sorts of weird human freakonomics things, whether you're on the top or the bottom. We all have our set of challenges, though. If you have money problems, more money is going to help your money problems, at least. So there's, at least you can say that. But the other thing with money problems is there's always someone making more and always someone making less. So, like, the normal millionaire, you could say, he's got all the money he needs in the world, but the millionaire is sitting there looking at the billionaire being like, or even the guy that's got 10 million, it's like, geez, how could I turn my million into 10, right? There's always ways to aim upward and do more with your life. And I always see money as like a proxy for freedom. Like, you can spend it to buy experiences or tools or buy other people's labors to help you accomplish something. Anyways, back to the book. Hopefully we didn't get too far off on that tangent.
Yeah.
So we don't rescue the drowning. That was one thing I said in the book, right? And I think it also was talking about,
Well, then they started getting into this idea of the repetition compulsion, which was something that I really liked. This idea of faulty tools produce faulty results. Because a lot of people make the same errors over and over again. Like, for example, they'll find themselves with the same type of friends. They'll make a bad friend, but then, they'll find that they make a lot of people have this realization. They're like, oh, this friend is the same as this other friend who I don't like hanging out with anymore because they screwed me over, or they were just into gossip, or all they did was watch television. So we have this repetition compulsion, or this, same thing too as like with habits. It's like some people just can't seem to get their diets under control, or they can't get their sleep habits under control, or things like that. And
quit calling me out.
right, because we all have these things, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was what got me thinking was, we talked about the repetition compulsion comes from, I can't remember exactly, but it was something like not learning from your mistakes. And I thought, man, everybody kind of knows when they make a mistake, right? But we don't learn from our mistakes. Like, what's the difference? How do you learn from your mistakes?
I've thought about this for a bit too, because I saw that too, because there's people that make mistakes over and over again. And I think we have these blind spots. And one way Peterson talks about is to talk to others, right? And you can see what I can't see because you have different experience and different tools in your two senses, as well as different senses. Like you have different life experiences. So hear a story, you pick up on different things, what's between the lines, so to speak. And so just sharing is one way to do it. But another thing I think is you can also self-reflect or have introspection. The people that take time and kind of go over, okay, so what was that experience? What went wrong? Did I do everything right? What are the things I could have done better? If you look at the elements of things you can control, and really think about what you can try next time when that emotional confrontation happens, you have those tools at the ready because you've thought about them before, right? You're like, well, next time I was supposed to try this thing and see if this works out better. So I think you can either talk to someone like a friend and walk them through it, and they can cast judgment and let you know how you did or what they would have done differently. And you don't know if that's better or not until you try it either. That's the weird thing about talking to people. And then there's also books. You can read books. That's just like hearing someone else's perspectives and gives you ideas to put in your toolbox to try. But unless you put the time in and you either reflect with the friend or reflect with yourself. And I definitely think it's probably harder to reflect with yourself. But that's why things like meditation are so important, to shut down the world and your senses and really just focus on yourself or whatever. And it's probably why our brains are attacking us at 4 a.m. Like, dude, you need to process this, dude. You need to think about this. Yeah. And I'm like, but I want to go to bed. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Right. But even when we sleep, we have nightmares and dreams, and that's one side of our brain working ideas out. And okay, you're in this situation. What do? It's kind of like drills, right?
Yeah.
And you can actually learn things from dreams, right? You put in a situation, you figure out what works, and you think what didn't actually have to live the experience, but it felt real. So you kind of responded, or at least semi-real.
Right.
Yeah, I've had those dreams where you're in your car or whatever, and the gas pedals don't work or the brakes don't work the way you want, so you're crashing into stuff. You're like, oh, my poor car. Anyways, have you ever had one of those?
No, but I kind of have similar dreams. Yeah. Where you're just you can't control and you just keep getting hit.
Yeah, and I've had that style dream so many times. I'm like, oh, I know I'm in a dream. That's why it's not working. I panic a lot less.
That'd be interesting to talk to some of these Jungian psychologists about dreams, because that's the whole thing is, or not his whole thing, but that's part of it, right? Is that dreams are important. I just thought about that. I have some recurring dreams that are I wonder what they mean,
Yeah, something our mind knows that they want to drill us on, or we should be drilling ourselves on. So it's something, and it's so abstract and disconnected. I forgot some examples, but there is some literature talking about this dream, this scenario usually means this type of dream, like your teeth rotting or something. I forgot what that is. You need to go take care of something. It's about anxiety. There's something that's really making you anxious, and you keep putting it off, and you really need to address it. And so your dreams, if you haven't brushed your teeth are disintegrating. It's
yeah.
I think that's the one I remember. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, but it's cool to just kind of have a rubric. But I mean, it's not always 100% accurate. It's definitely probably closer to a work in progress, or just broad strokes. But
well, I mean, talk to one of these people that studies it and would have experience in the matter, or have analyzed a bunch of dreams and a bunch of people's dreams, as opposed to a rubric.
Yeah, it would be good.
I don't like rubrics. I don't find they work.
There'd be this person you're talking about. Some of his example, whether it be a book or a report or his research. I think we're saying the same thing.
I always wonder about that with therapists, therapists in general, because they tend to. It's like, how do they know? You know, it's like the therapist, you know, is helping you organize your mind by their interpretation of what they've learned. You know, but it's like, you know, how much can you trust that?
Well, I'm guessing, I don't really know a whole lot. It would be something along the lines of, these are the common pitfalls that people get themselves into. Like, these are the common problems.
Mm-hmm.
And they listen and they throw you into one of these boxes and then apply the prescription for that box. But as they get to know you over time, they probably will find that maybe it is that box or maybe it isn't. You know, it's more detailed. Or it's actually this box in disguise. I think generally when you
so
have...
you gotta put the time in.
Yeah, you have like
it's like a relationship. It grows between the two of you.
Well, and you only have so many tools, right? A doctor can cut you, do surgery, give you pills, or do nothing. That's 3 things a doctor can do, right, to fix you. And those aren't really great options if you think about it. There's dangers.
I like
and
what
risks
Jordan Peterson said about going to your therapist. The worst thing you want to hear is, I've never heard that before. Or like, I have no idea what to do about that. You know, it's like, that's the worst thing you can tell somebody who's having a mental issue, you know?
Yeah, you're paying them to help you out. And like, if, I mean, it's one thing to be like a helping hand, like, I don't know, but we'll figure this out. Like, someone's going to guide you through the journey, you know? Like, I'm not sure yet, but we'll get there.
Well, even that, you don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah.
You want to hear, that problem is this. You know, a lot of people have that problem. Here's things that people commonly do to fix that. Don't worry, we're gonna get through this, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you want to hear. That's like mentally reassuring, you know. But if you walk in, they're like, whoa, that I've never heard of that before.
Just that chair. But anyways,
that was my foot.
I know. I realized
we're getting frisky into the table here.
Yeah. I just wanted to check on the laptop, but I can't see it well from here. Sorry, before I got frisky with you, what were you saying?
I'm just pretending to check on it.
Gotcha.
Oh, I like, you know, Jordan. You know, it's interesting because Jordan Peterson is like a therapist, you know, and he has this analogy of a therapist as a mechanic, and the us or people that a therapist would help are sort of like the car, and their job is to make you go. You know, and so in that sense, it kind of doesn't really matter what a therapist says to you as long as it helps you.
Yeah, and there's the different resolutions. It's like, oh, you're a Mazda RX-7, and then he opens the hood and he's like, oh, you're a Mazda RX-7 with a bunch of broken spark plugs and valve mistime is in, you know, or at least looks that way. And then he replaces the spark plugs and fixes the valve time, and he sees another problem. You know, the more major thing that caused that problem.
That's probably why he says try to stop doing. Like, instead of trying to figure out what you should do, just stop doing what you know you should not do, right? Because on a car, it's like it's easy to, you know, get caught up in like, oh, I don't like. I mean, as humans as cars, it's easy to be like, well, I need a truck and this is a hatchback. It doesn't really work. But meanwhile, the spark plugs don't work. It's like, fix the spark plugs. Right, and so then it's like 2 trips instead of, or I don't know why you would need a truck.
Is that kind of like the clean your room, like you got to start with the small things first type of thing? Or?
Yeah, I think, right?
Yeah,
there's a common theme there. Take a small step, right?
Yeah, because you could still haul with a hatchback. Like, you knew it'd just be more trips, right? Truck would make it faster, but if your hatchback doesn't move at all, it doesn't matter. You want in a truck, it's not gonna. Yeah, you gotta get the catchback moving if you want to make it to the truck.
Yeah, you're like, oh, we could move all this stuff in 1 trip if we had a truck, but we got to make 3 trips, and it's like, man, but the car you have doesn't even run. Like, get it running and start making trips. Like, you know, you don't have a truck and your hatchback isn't running. Like, replace the spark plugs, and then at least you could be making trips. You know, right now you're just sitting, you know, in your mom's basement playing video games or something. I don't know. That was supposed to be a Jordan Peterson-esque, right?
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about that too, you know, because I've been trying to branch out and learn more about Jordan Peterson on the internet, and I've been going to a lot of these Jordan Peterson groups, you know, and it's interesting the conversations that are had in these Jordan Peterson groups, because to me it seems like it's sort of like what's the word, like antithetical to Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson's advocating, like, to me his biggest thing is like taking responsibility. You know, and then I read these posts and these conversations that people have, and it seems like they've missed the point, right? They're so, it's like this chapter, they're so worried about what other people are doing. They're not worried about what they're doing. And so, I don't know how that ties in, but.
Well, I can't think of a specific rule that would tie it to responsibility much. I think he tries to explain their certain responsibilities with like seeking truth and seeking rot, but I wouldn't. I mean, he went on like Jocko Willink's Jocko podcast, right? And like he wrote Extreme Responsibility, I think it was called, something along those lines. Extreme ownership, right? Where he's trying to take that to, and Peterson does agree with that, but I just can't think of anything in the book where he talks about that. Because like in this chapter, for example,
where do you get the pick up the largest burden,
the heaviest burden you can carry? Yeah.
That's what that means, right?
Well,
take as much responsibility as you can handle.
Yeah, I think so. I would say that's fair. Yeah.
And then he talked. Yeah, which rule is it where he talks about the ancient Jewish people felt that God's they felt. How did you phrase it? It was like something like life, God's law and life was axiomatic, so they thought that if anything ever went wrong, they thought it was their fault. And so they put the burden on themselves. They said, we failed to pay sufficient attention. This came about because of what we did. They didn't blame that, and that's in one of the rules. Which rule is that in?
I don't remember. That's
in I don't remember exactly which rule it is either. I could find it, but that's kind of like, I don't know. I think that I don't know if there's a specific. I think that's the point. I think that's every single rule from the very beginning is talking about taking personal responsibility for everything.
Well, it's interesting because I think about this rule 3 here that we're doing, and one of the things he says is that we're not morally obliged to go down with someone else. So when he's talking about saving the sinking person, it's not a moral obligation we have. So he's also letting us go on some responsibilities too. It's like we can perceive we have these responsibilities that we really don't have. So,
but I think what he's saying there is, I think he's saying that some people, they think, oh, I need to help these disadvantaged people over here. I need to help this disadvantaged person in my life as a way of abdicating their own responsibility. Like you were talking about when you said, I could help Dallas clean his room instead of cleaning my room. Because I think that's what he's saying, right?
Well, and I think it goes to the carry the heaviest burden you can. If you take on too much, it's too heavy. That's obviously not what he's saying, right? If you take on too much.
You got to take on just enough.
And you got to be capable to carry the load that you aim to carry. So you got to, A, be capable, and B, have your aims line up close to your capabilities.
Yeah. And I think carrying other people's loads is what he's talking about.
Yeah,
he's saying don't carry other people's loads.
And there's a strategy there because you have to pick which ones you can carry because you can't carry everyone.
Right.
So you can't take responsibility for everything. But I definitely agree that all the rules generally port towards that meaning is tied to responsibility. And that's kind of the general message, I would say. A lot of this stuff, at least, for the current things that most people need to hear are probably, actually follow through with your word. If you give your word that you're going to do something, do it. And in a world right now where I think everyone wants rights, but my rights are your responsibility and your rights are my responsibility. So the more freedoms we want to create for everyone, we also have more responsibilities on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely
it does get tricky. It does get tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to look over the book again with that in mind and really think about how it connects each rule more directly with responsibility. But I do think you're right. You're onto something.
That's another thing that I've been thinking about is reading the book over and over again. How do you feel about that? I had an interesting conversation this week about not reading the book over and over again. It was with somebody else who's a Jordan Peterson, lover of this book, and they were saying, I've read it. Like, I'm done. I get it.
Yeah, people are like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering. Yeah, everybody has to each their own, right? Like.
Yeah, I don't.
For me though, it's like, I can see the value in repetition.
Yeah, like on my own, I would have said I've read this book. I don't need to read it again. But because I come to this group every week, and we went through the book. I've been through the book 1.5 times. So there's like about half the chapters I've done twice. And every time we've discussed the same chapter, it's been a completely different experience. I've learned completely different things. It's never been the same experience. So,
yeah.
And even his videos, rewatching like the biblical series, I watched them before the group, and then we're watching it together as a group, and we're just talking about different things, and I'm hearing different things. So there's absolutely something you can do about revisiting the materials. But I think there's also diminishing returns. Though when you add a group like this, it amplifies it though. So it's hard to get diminishing groups when there's 7 new people searching for new items and then bringing them out each time. You know, even if only 3 people find something, that's still probably 3 times more likely than things you're going to find on your own.
Right.
So there's the interesting, complex dynamics of all that.
I always think of that quote every time I start to feel that because I have books that I reread, and every time I start to feel like I'm not getting anything out of it, I think of that quote by Horace. I think it's by Horace, and it's something like, "No man steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he's not the same man." And so that's that's the way I look at it. I think, okay, you know, what delusion am I holding on to that's preventing me from gaining a new insight from this material?
Yeah, and I think you're just like self-reflecting. It's just you spend the time, you're doing the work, and you're getting more out of it that way. Yeah. And not everyone has to get every single thing out. I think a lot of Peterson's material is very dense, and why there's more there to get out of there. We'll still never truly know what he thinks or how he thinks. I mean, he'll always be unique in that regard.
So that comes back to this repetition compulsion and learning from our mistakes. And I think there's still a further step that people don't take when it comes to learning from their mistakes. And that's like making a plan and taking action on it right away. I think that so few people actually do that. I think they do introspection and they listen to themselves, they talk to their friends, and I think people know what they do wrong and they think about it, and I think they kind of beat themselves up over it, but they don't actually take any further steps, you know, because maybe it's not making a plan, taking action. But I think there's further steps or something. Well, there's there's so many people that don't learn from their mistakes.
I would say that, you know, you came up with the other ideas, but when you're presented with a problem again, it's very hard to try a new idea.
Yeah.
Especially if you know the other one didn't work. You're like, well, maybe that was just that situation. It'll work this time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that's easy for you to do, or maybe something that you really believe should work. You should just try it again, and you'll tweak one small thing in it. Because it's very different to like not act with your emotions and instincts, I would say, right?
Yeah.
So you have all these voices in your head, and you have who you are, and you have how you process your senses, and it kind of skews your own perspective. It's kind of going to skew your actions. So doing something that's not you, it's not easy. So I definitely think that it's hard to try new things, and so you might, like I said, not learn.
How do you keep yourself doing something that's not you? I mean, you've talked to people, you've made the plan, you're moving forward in this new direction, but something happens, as does always happen, where you start to go back to the old you, and you begin to give up on the new you. How do you stick with the new you?
Oh, that's a good question. Because your aims over time can change, right? Like, I wanted to be a firefighter, and now I'm going to be a policeman. You know, it completely can change. So there is that aspect. So I think we're all constantly fighting with, you know, making sure we're aiming at the right thing, because it's not always about the destination, right? It's about the journey.
You think it's the aim? You think that the new you, once you have the new aim, that's an interesting idea, because when you make a new aim, I guess you have to be a new person to pursue that aim.
Well, you need a new path.
Yeah.
You can't keep going down the path because, you know, you're both with this way and you're going this way. Maybe if you're going this way, you're like, well, that's kind of closer. I'm going at least that, and I'm down here. You know, it's getting a little closer, but eventually I'll have to. I cut over.
So you think of it as you would use the path to gauge how your fidelity to the new you, and if the more divergent you are from the path, then the less adherent you are to your new you.
And I think what this chapter is talking about is, like, you know, you want to make sure you have friends that people that want the best for you, or at least you know they're aiming upward. And I think when you're looking at the various views or your path's changing, you got to make sure that the path is still elevating yourself, right? It's still an aim that's going to bring you up and not bring you down, so to speak, because when you do change paths, there's all these ones above and there's all these paths below, and you can go in any direction.
Right.
And it's some of those paths below, especially after if you're so high in the hierarchy, let's say, you've put all this time and effort in, the ones below are like comfortable, and you've lived in there. You know what they are. They're the known, right? They're not the chaos that expects you above.
Maybe that's why he was talking about making new ruts, and kind of being an up and out of there person, because maybe he was saying that his old town in Canada, the small town that he started the chapter talking about, maybe that was like a lower level on the hierarchy, and then because he wanted to be an up and out of there, maybe he wanted up and out of that lower level of the hierarchy into like the next level. And so you want to be around people that want to go up and out of there to the next level, because then he spent a good portion of the book talking about his friends that didn't, who remained friends with each other and the other, degenerates, or however you'd want to phrase that. But they didn't. And then so their paths crossed. He talked about how their paths crossed again later, and he went with the up and out of theirs, and they stayed with the down and happy theirs, or whatever it is. And I think that's I'm just thinking about this right now, because I was thinking, why is he spending so much time talking about these guys, these loser guys? And maybe it's because he wanted to make that impression. He wanted to, because he's trying to make a warning. He's trying to warn against people who are not up and out of there people. Maybe that's the up and out of there. You want to always be climbing the hierarchy. You're either climbing, like you're saying, your goals are always drifting. We're drifting off of target. And so you want to be with people who are paying attention to the drift and climbing the ladder.
I think the people that are not only having the introspection, spending the time to better themselves, figure out but actually are trying to better themselves. They're actually selecting those ideas that aren't the normal selves.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's part of the message.
That's a good insight. I mean, I was trying to figure that out in the chapter. That's I think a really helpful insight.
Yeah, because I think some of that's personality too. Like, people probably could have stayed in Jordan Peterson's hometowns with certain aims and goals, and that was the right choice for them. Like, not everyone has to aim to get out of there, but it was the right path for Jordan, right? And that's what he's saying. And then so there are some people that should have aimed to get out of them, because that's the type of person they were.
Yeah.
That didn't aim for that, or wasn't able to execute on that, let's say.
Right.
And they had a different outcome. He talks about his friend Chris, who just got angry at girls because he never learned to date, and then he got angry at the world because he didn't have any money, and then he wanted women, and because he didn't have any money, they didn't want him. Peterson talks about the night where he had his friend over, and he had a couple, his brother-in-law, and he was with his wife, so it was a bunch of couples around angry single dude. Right. And he could just feel like there was this murderous aurora in the house, and he had to go address that and spend time with his friend and talk him down from the edge. And unfortunately, later on in the book, I think he says his friend kills himself, which is because it's just unable to deal with the world. After so many 30, 40 years of bad choices, it's hard to fix that.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting story that helps convey these ideas. And I mean, I think Peterson tried to help and tried to carry the burden, but at the same time, he also had to let him go too. Yeah,
because he was. What are you going to do? He had to focus on his family and his career, rather than go down into the abyss with his friend.
Yep. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, that was one thing we talked about in the group, was the psychology of asking for a favor. Darlene really felt that it was connected to this chapter. Like, by asking someone you meet fresh or newly, if you ask them for a favor, it builds a bunch of trust, places a bunch of trust in them, like they can execute that favor, and then you're like borrowing back from that trust by actually, hey, can you help me? It's saying, hey, you're a really capable guy, can use those capabilities for me.
Right.
So it's interesting. So you create this like transaction, this social transaction or whatever, and by doing that, I owe you something because I asked you for the favor, and it's like a good kickstart for the relationship. But it's not an easy thing to ask someone else for a favor. I mean, it's
counterintuitive.
Well, and it's you don't want to get to know the person first.
The thinking is, when you say that, my thinking is, I'd want to do a favor for someone.
Yeah, right. It's easier. I want to show what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
then it's like, I want to ask this guy for a favor. I don't need a favor, but if you do that, I mean, the people that have learned and lived and know how humans interact, the psychology has shown that by doing that, you can build trust really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was interesting. There was a lot of discussion this week about how to meet people and meet friends. How do you meet the friends that want the best from you? Was kind of the topic that we explored.
What did you guys come up with?
Well, I had a lot of parallels with dating. So like dating, I would subscribe. You want someone you're attracted to, but beyond that is like you want someone that's not a loser, right? That's capable, and has some admirable qualities. Mm-hmm. And I think if you take that to a platonic level, it's like the way I make friends is I want someone that's admirable, that's like a hero in their own right, or they have these skills I'd love to have, and like I want to be around them because they're aiming up, or they have all these abilities, and by spending time with them I'll learn their patterns. And just like the rich dad poor dad thing, there's like evidence to show if I hang around rich people it'll help increase my net worth, but psychology's also shown that if you hang out with a bunch of fat guys at lunch, guess which way your weight's going to go. Mm-hmm. So definitely being around other people can affect your own behavior and own decisions. So I think the impetus for friendship is to find others you admire and then spending time around them. So how do you so that's the kind of the basis and the link, I think, between the dating thing, and then in the dating world there's a lot more written on it because it's a lot of future problem to solve. I mean, there's so much written on it because it's so complex to do. But like one of the early steps to dating is like you got to put yourself out there. Like you got to go to the meat markets. Like if you want to find someone, you got to either hit online, and there's millions of people online, so you got to filter it down and search, or you got to go to the clubs and the bars and the places where the opposite sexes or the desired sex you want to date is the preferred sex.
Right.
You got to put yourself out there, and you got to put yourself in high density places where you're going to increase those chances. So there is a bit of strategy there. And I think as you get older, when a lot of your friendships decayed, I mean, some of your best friends for the years, they have something catastrophic happen to them, or something major happens in their life, and they're no longer the same person. You be like, wow, I don't have this friend I once used to have. So it's almost like this impetus. We got to keep meeting people and keep opening ourselves. But like as we get older, we start realizing better who we are and who we want to spend time with. And we know now who we don't want to spend time with. Like in our youth, we're like, well, I'll run with Matt or whatever, and we'll have a lot of fun times. But eventually you learn that those type of Matt people are really bad for you.
Right.
So there's all this knowledge you have about yourself, and so as you get older, you're kind of pickier and more judgmental because you have that experience. You know where the center is and where you should aim. So it's harder to meet people and be accepting of people. I mean, we're all chimpanzees with snakes in our hearts. So we know that not everyone can keep their snakes under control. Even the people that have been around for 20, 30 years all of a sudden implode, and that's you have that one big huge trust withdrawal in the middle of your life can throw it all into chaos. Like your best friend turning on you after a huge thing is. I'm sure that's why Dante says the deepest layer of hell is for betrayal, right? It's like we deeply feel that. So it's hard to put ourselves out there because it makes us vulnerable and to hurt and developing those deep relationships, those long-term relationships. So a lot of people want to not experience that. And then also when you're old, everyone's dying. Everyone's at the end of the thing. So chances a lot of your friends aren't going to be around too much longer, which is a hard thing to face too. So it might be good to get some young friends. I don't have much more to say about that, but it's not easy either because young friends are just as volatile as your friends that were when you were that age. So it's not an easy equation, but at least that's how I understand things to work.
Yeah, finding good friends is tough.
Yeah, and keeping friends, like having enough pool of them that you can develop deep amount of relationships. So you gotta put yourself out there and have a couple acquaintances that might develop into deeper friends, but you can't just wall yourself out and become a hermit either. We are definitely social creatures, and it hurts just as bad to be a hermit than to have all your friends betray you at one point or another.
Well, what doesn't hurt though is having the wrong friends, and then because you won't find out until it's too late.
Well, yeah, it's like if the friends that you have aren't helping your aims, right? If they're holding you back instead of propelling you where you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the right group for you. And he talks about that in this chapter too,
Mm-hmm.
about figure out what you want to do, folks, and head towards it.
Right. It's a tough thing, you know. They say you are the average of your 5 closest friends, right? So you take a look at your friends and you average them and you think, is this where I want to go?
And doesn't mean go home and like, all right, here's the roster. I'm cutting you and I'm cutting you.
That's exactly what it means.
You think? I don't know. I'll just do it gently. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe Dallas is more right. Maybe Peterson's saying, hey, you got some phone calls to make tonight. You don't actually break up with friends, though. You just ghost them.
You just ghost them.
You just ghost them and let it happen naturally.
That's a good question. How do you break up with friends? You know, that's it's interesting because if you're going to be making new friends, that means you're going to be purging friends. If you're going to adhere to Peterson's advice to make friends with people who want the best for you, because if you're making friends, you're going to make friends with people who don't want the best for you. Because you won't know until you at least interview them for a little while. Oh yeah, you got to have cadence. You got to build that like runway to get to know them, and that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's going to be a couple months,
maybe or years even.
So that means you're going to be breaking up with friends. How should you break up with friends?
Well, you just go on Facebook and you click friend and you click unfriend and you just wash your hands.
That's it. Yeah, and then they go to look at your profile and
it's like, Sally unfollowed me. Oh my God, Sally, what's the problem? You get the angry text.
I was just watching this movie where it was a guy in a store, right? And this one customer comes in, the protagonist of the movie, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's talking to him, and then somebody else comes in, and the next person that came in was trying to like make small talk with the store owner, but the store owner was infatuated with the protagonist. Yeah. So he's like, get out of here. But the protagonist, I don't know, this is not a good way to explain this at all. But you know we get into that where it's like it's basically, you know, I like him, he likes him. Yeah, exactly.
Love triangle. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in all rom-coms. Yeah. I mean that opens up the drama, right? When there's a love triangle, because you don't know what's going to happen, who's going to get who, because it's like a Mexican standoff almost, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the female equivalent of the male Mexican standoff.
But wait, you don't know who's going to get who, because it's you know, is this person going to settle for this person, or is this person going to forget about that person?
Yeah, sometimes it's more like a spiral where the last person is like the first person, right? It's not a complete triangle or whatever. Yeah. So it's like everyone likes everyone else, but no one likes each other back.
There's always the person at the bottom. That's why in the movies, that person at the bottom always finds their true love. It's somebody else. And then they're like, "Oh, I thought you loved me." Like, no, I found this person over here. It was perfect for me. Look, she's also into, you know, I don't know, jumping off of bridges.
They were searching for the truth and finding the rot, and they found the rot in their relationship.
Perhaps, yeah, exactly.
And then I think
purging friends. It's an interesting way of thinking about it, because everybody thinks, I want more friends, but you don't realize that more friends comes with getting rid of friends. Or it should actually, maybe that's an admonition. Like you should. Because how many people have that too, where they want to be friends with everybody?
Oh yeah,
right? That's.
I don't know anyone that wants to be disliked. I mean, there's some people that like, I hold this position. I don't care if you don't like that position, type of thing. But like, everyone I've run into, like, I would like that guy to like me. Like everyone I meet would be nice.
Yeah.
But like, especially when someone doesn't like you and it's obvious, it's just like, oh man, if I could just make them like me. Why do they hate me so much? You know.
Right.
Yeah. I'm very much that person. Like, why don't they like me? I like me. They should too.
I'm the person that I misrepresent myself all the time, and like when I meet people, I'll just try to make connect talk, and then they'll build assumptions of who I am based on the connect talk, but I'm not. I haven't taken the conversation as seriously as they have, and now they think, oh, Dallas and I get along great, but in my head I'm like, you and I don't get along great, and then they see me and they're like, hey, how's it going? You know, and you're like, Kevin. They're like, no, Sam. They're like, Sam. You know, it's like.
Well, some of that's sales. It's just business, I think.
Yeah.
It's just the culture that the realities are. It's a very uncomfortable process. And I think one of the things Peterson said in the recent Q&A, he was talking about, maybe it wasn't Peterson, it was something else I was watching or reading, actually. But they're talking about the sales process. It's like the car dealer, he stares at you and watches you. He's looking for every single tell on you, and he's like it's like you know, when your pet, if you like stare at your pet, it's a thing of aggression. Like two dogs will stare at each other before they rip out each other's throats. It's like the last thing they're doing. They're watching every muscle and every hair just to like predict that reaction, right?
Right.
And so like, it's interesting to hear the car sales thing put it in that same thing. Like, he's watching you to death with his eyeballs, and his focus is on you so intently. You're like, you're his prey. Right. It's a very like adversarial.
But that's not going to be a successful salesperson. The successful salespeople are the ones who actually value themselves and don't chase down every sale.
I'll pick up on with you there. I think a salesperson that's paying attention to his customer has a better chance of serving them. It's the salespeople that don't serve their customers which are probably the horrible ones, right? Like, if he's only serving himself.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying because we're talking about making friends and losing friends. So I'm thinking in the beginning of the sales process. So for example, if you have a client, a potential client, right? Because that's the sales process. Once they're a customer, you know, sales is something different. It's about serving them. It's about serving them, right? Yeah. But in the beginning, you don't want to serve them. In the beginning, it's like Darlene's talking about. You want to ask them for a favor. Right? So if you begin the sales process and they're like, oh, I have X, Y, Z, Q, and R demands, and also I have a second list of P, S, you know, that's someone you want to go, you know what, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, the distance is too far, right?
Yeah,
you can't negotiate that.
You want to value yourself. So that's why a used car salesman will stare people down looking for anything. But, you know, I guess a good car salesman
ask for favors somehow.
Yeah, exactly. No, you would ask for a favor somehow.
How would that look like?
For a used car salesman?
Whatever example you can think of, how sales guy asking for a favor, because I have a hard time. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense. I just can't think of how I would do that as a salesperson.
Well, you walk in and you say, well, what are you going to do for me? No, so seriously. Okay,
Gotcha.
So actually that works for the car example. So they come in and they're like, I'm looking for a Corvette and I'm not going to pay more than $5,000, right? Then instead of being like, well, look at this car, look at that car, look at that, you turn it around and you go, well, you know, well, do you have your documentation in order? You know, how's your credit? Yeah, are you ready to buy this thing today, or when are you buying it?
Cash in hand?
Yeah,
cashier's check. How are you going to get me the money?
Yeah, exactly. First show me. So like a bad car salesman would run around the lot and go, oh, we have a Camaro though. You know, a good car salesman is gonna qualify that person.
Yeah, and there's another thing about not communicating. Like, I'm just gonna stare at them and figure out and guess. I'm gonna gamble, see if you have the deposit or not. Like, I'm gonna stare at you. I can bet this guy. Versus if hey, you got your deposit. If you communicate, it's one thing. But you make all these assumptions, you're gonna be either disappointed or way off base when the truth comes out. So
and that's what
quicker
it is.
You hit the road.
Exactly. It's about managing expectations
and
communication. But communication.
And negotiating.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to walk up to them and start the conversation fair, because that person who's going to be a tough customer, you're going to be able to tell right away. It's not about getting someone to do a favor for you. It's about finding out if it's someone that you can negotiate with, if you can communicate with, right? Because if you walk up to them and they have, you know, they're not being complicit and they have demands for you already, you can tell right away that that's somebody that's not going to be, you know, a good person to. So as I'm saying this, I'm thinking too, when you ask somebody to do a favor, you should also measure that favor, because it shouldn't be like, hey, can you run to the store and get me some paper towels and Q-tips? You know, it should be like, you know, hey, can you grab that book for me off the shelf? And if they're like, oh yeah, here you go. What is this book? You're like, oh, this person's cool. But if they're like, you want me to grab a book for you off the shelf? You're like, hey, you know what? Actually, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's the paying attention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than just paying attention. It's also interacting with them, then negotiating with them.
That's a funny. I'm gonna go around doing that. I'm gonna go around asking people to do really simple things.
You should.
Yeah.
I'll, if I can find the article I read about it, I'll send you the link. But I think there's probably thousands now.
Well, I'm just gonna try it.
There you go. Yeah.
I've given up learning. No, I'm just kidding. I want to start getting back into prospecting. So you know, I'm gonna be
qualifying leads.
Yeah. I started my business just by hanging out in basically a Home Depot parking lot.
There you go.
Yeah, or and door knocking, going door to door.
That's hard, dude.
Yeah.
I tried cold calling once, but that's like cold going to door. Anything cold's horrible for a very specific reason, because it's like soul crushing, like the rejection one after another. You're talking about like a 1% success rate, so that's getting rejected by 99 people.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about dating rejection's hard, but like business rejection is almost just as hard, I would say. And then you have to like
it's all the same.
You got to have the hustle and the like drive to actually knock on like 100 doors to get that one customer.
It's the same thing though. If you're dating, right? That's why most people don't do it, is because they don't want to get rejected 100 times.
Well, yeah, it hurts to get rejected.
Yeah. It's hard to get married.
Well, and
or find a mate, life partner.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's not easy. It takes work.
And you know, your first well, in your first rejection, it hurts so bad too. It's like as a kid or whatever, you gotta get yourself out of the shells and stack up those rejections so you can get used to it and build on that. Otherwise, you stop putting yourself out there.
This is good for this conversation too, because what I want to do is I kind of want to go out and be like, you know, pushing my business, but then at the same time I want to be keeping an eye open for people who might be potential, like, because you know we're for growing the group, potential members. So I've been thinking about how to you know, like, what do you say to somebody who you meet them and you're like, okay, this person is half awake. Maybe that's it. How do you tell if someone is half awake?
Well, I think you have your senses. You can see them, you can smell them, you can taste them. Don't taste them, or you can touch them. Some sales guys are touchy-feely. You know, Joe Biden's getting in trouble for that right now. Mm-hmm. But you can hear them, you can see them, and even though you can see them, there's different things you can read. Right? There's body language you can read. You could hear the tone of their voice. There's we have all the collection of senses.
But there's something you gotta ask, right?
Yeah, well, you gotta interact with them. You know what I mean by
awake? You gotta awake in the Jordan Peterson sense of the word. Like, because
okay, so not actually
like I'm gonna be meeting people on the street, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to invite someone to come to the group. But I don't want to invite everyone to come to the group, because I think probably 99 out of 100 people aren't going to even know who Jordan Peterson is, or aren't going to be interested in his fight and all that stuff.
Well, one of the things I understand for sales, especially as you get to the higher dollar, like if I'm selling you a project for $1,000, I can get it on a single sheet of paper. But I'm asking you for $10,000. That proposal better be 10 pages long. Like there's this ratio of the amount you're asking for, right? The value and description, right? Because you don't want to just hand over a check without having a detailed plan.
Right.
So what were you asking again? I just lost my train of thought. You're talking about something about meeting friends.
Yeah, meeting friends. I was just throwing it out there and saying that I'm wondering about meeting people that might be interested in the Napa Jordan Peterson meetup group. I'm wondering how to. Yeah.
So since you need, like, if you're asking a big ask, like you're not sure how much, you can break it into smaller steps. Like that's the sales process. Like if you're asking for, let's say $100,000, that's not going to close in a month. That might take a year. And so you build that relationship slowly, because it's just like trust, right? Trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. So you have to have a long enough runway to build that trust. So you start with small asks, like, hey, are you interested in this? You get start with a yes or no, right? You warm them up. And this happens in the sales process, whether it's the car sales that's going to happen in a day, or like I said, it's a year-long enterprise sales thing, where you start with a small yes, no, you get them warmed up. And even it could be the same process of talking to 8-year-old kids, like the same rules apply.
Yeah,
and you slowly build on it to the point where you know them enough, or you've used your senses and your awareness and your communication and negotiation, that you can get them closer to the direction you want to push them. Like, and if you build that relationship, there's going to be more than just one thing. It's like you're not going to be single-minded where you only want to have this relationship for this one use, right? You're actually in sales building a relationship that has all these different topics. Like you want to talk about your hobby, or you talk about what's going on in your life. Kind of like a friend a little bit,
right? Yeah.
Or share same burdens and similar jobs. So there's a bit of a relationship, and I think
that's a good point too. I guess the thing I was thinking was that I don't necessarily want to invite people to the group who I would want to be friends with, but maybe I would. I never thought of that.
Well, there's that whole dynamic between friends, relationships, and like business relationships, right? It's a different thing. It's just like platonic and dating.
Of opinion.
There's this place in business where we have these business relationships that are, you can talk about family, and so it's not necessarily strictly business, but you try to keep it professional, and you try to keep it so that if you lost your job and change. Sometimes you give sales where you just take your clients with you, but that's obviously not in the company's best interest. So there's a lot of different things, but like when you want to meet friends and you want friends that want the best for you, and you said you're not sure how to approach it slowly, because if they're really into like self-help, let's say, you can drop hints and then they'll respond greatly. Like oh, I love that. And
I think more that's what I was thinking was like, I wonder what people who would be into Jordan Peterson would be into.
That's a good question.
For like, you know, it was a stupid thought.
No,
I was thinking about putting a script together, and I was just thinking about what.
That's what salespeople do, and I think that's incredibly helpful. Even if you wanted to meet friends, have a script. It's kind of like having that tools and the plans. You know,
yeah.
If the conversation this way, I can have these things ready to think of. A lot of people complain I don't know how to make small talk. Well, how do you learn to make small talk? Well, you make some small talk and experience it, watch it, read it. You think about it. You got to put those like tools in your belt. Yeah.
What did I just hear lately? Somebody was saying that it was some quote like, "If you are bored, it's because you're not interesting." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that might have been Peterson. I don't know. Sounds like something, or someone brought it up in the group at least.
Did they? Yeah.
Maybe it was you. I don't know.
It's something like that. Like if you can't figure out how to make small talk, then you know, I don't know. I guess you're probably going the path to the abyss.
I think
because that's like that's the fun of life, right?
I've been pretty good at being able to small talk, but like
yeah.
Small talk's just that. What I like doing is if you can find someone's passion, what they're passionate about, you can really get like when someone's talking about what they love, it comes through, and I think that's really entertaining, and it's more engaging. It's like there's just something about that. Like even if we're talking about like weightlifting, it's not my thing, but I know you're pretty passionate about that. I mean, just how much you love it and stuff. It's a lot more funner conversation than if we're just how's the weather.
We should find places where passions cross and then see if that doesn't produce like the most optimal conversation. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and I think that's even more rewarding because if you talk about sales and I'm also into sales, we'll end up having a little conversation and we both learn something from it, and it's both helps our tool belt.
Mm-hmm. I always put together like a script or something, and then I just go use it. I don't know. I always just do it like.
I've never been in a sales position, but I've been in positions where I've had to understand what salespeople do and like sales engineering where I have to support them. Yeah. So I know a little bit, but I've never actually had to go through the process.
I've never been successful at sales, so I don't know if my opinion qualifies as anything.
I would say most young salesmen aren't, right? It's like
could be, yeah.
It just takes time. I mean, people are like
we all want to be
chimpanzees with snakes, man. You got to learn how to deal with it, whether you're a psychologist or a salesman or just someone that wants to make friends. Like you got to like know what the human zoo's like, and got to be prepared for it.
Yeah, study psychology.
I would have never thought that Rule 3 would get us into sales, but that's the revisiting the ideas in this book with other people. That's cool. That's the cool thing. We always talk about something new and different.
Yeah. We always put together quite a smattering of random, disconnected ideas.
Yep. You want to call it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll try to get together another weekend here and record another one for you guys. We're doing a lot of biblical series, but in 3 weeks we're also going to hit Rule 4. And I really want to get Rule 4 in the take, so I'm going to definitely try to get back either then or before then. So we'll see you guys.
Bomb. I didn't bring
subscribe
any music, so I'll just make my own.
All right.